So I want to tell you the story of how I learned to sell. See, my parents got divorced when I was 6 years old, and I'm sure, that some of you are, you know, children from divorces. That's unfortunately very, very common. Well, my parents got divorced when I was 6 years old. The court gave custody of myself and my brother to my mom. Well, my mom was a social worker, didn't make any money, and ultimately, we moved to Daytona Beach, Florida, from Oklahoma to Daytona Beach, Florida. And what I didn't know at the time was my mom was going through some severe depression. It wasn't until later in life that she shared with me that she actually went through a period of time where she was suicidal and had thought about taking her own life. And quite honestly, one of the biggest reasons that she didn't was myself and my brother. But as I look on it now as an adult, I really hate that I didn't have a better understanding to support my mom. But all I could think about at that time was myself. I mean, I was 11, 12 years old at about this particular stage of life. And I was just thinking about myself. You know, there was many nights when my mom didn't come home. And back then there were no cell phones. There wasn't picking up the phone and calling her. If she didn't call, I didn't know where to call or didn't get a phone call from her. She just stayed out all night. And, my brother and I, we expected our mom to come home and cook us dinner, and nobody came home. It was just us. I actually learned to cook because I can remember my brother and I sitting on the couch, hungry. He was looking to me, he's 5 years younger than me, and he was looking to me like, I'm hungry. What do we do? We didn't, normally cereal was our go-to. Let's just go pour a bowl of cereal, we'll eat cereal. Well, there was no cereal. There was nothing in the house, nothing except a log of ground beef, hamburger meat. And I had watched my mom in the past make hamburger patties, and that was our favorite meal, hamburger patties. We loved hamburger patties. And I'd watched her do it. I thought I could do that. I'm going to, make dinner for my brother. Well, I never thought about the fact that you had to thaw the meat. So I took it out thinking I could just chop it up and put it in the skillet and here we go. And didn't work that way. So we had to set it out, let it thaw, put it under hot water, let it thaw, and just start pulling some of the meat off as it thawed off the outside. And eventually made hamburger patties, and he and I had hamburger patties. That was the first time I ever learned to cook anything. So we didn't have any money. As I look back, here's the crazy thing. As I look back, I didn't really know that I was poor. I know that may sound crazy, but some of you can relate. I didn't really know I was poor. I just knew that other kids had more than I had. And I wasn't a kid who sat around and felt sorry for myself. I was a kid, and I'm not trying to make myself sound like I'm all that, but it's just the way I am. I was not a kid that felt sorry for myself. I was a kid that tried to figure out how to get what I wanted. And they weren't always legal. Okay, I'm just telling you the truth. Hopefully the statute of whatever they call it has passed because, some of the things I did weren't legal, but, I wasn't thinking about I'm breaking the law or, whatever. I'm just trying to use creativity to find a way to come up with money so that I could buy shoes, so that I could buy candy, so that I could have some of the things that I wanted because my mother did not have the money to give us. She barely had the money to support, actually, I won't even go into some of the crazy things that happened, bill collectors coming and knocking on the door and all that stuff. That was just life. I didn't even think I thought everybody had to deal with that kind of stuff. That's just life. Anyway, but I want to tell you this story. I had this shirt and it was a tan colored shirt with patches on it. And it looked kind of like a Boy Scout shirt. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to put this shirt on because people aren't going to pay that close of attention. And I'm going to go door to door. I had a coffee can and I went door to door through Daytona Beach, Florida, raising money for the Boy Scouts of America. And people would put money in my coffee can. And I probably raised a couple $100 before I finally knocked on the door of one of the den masters who said, and he actually thought I was doing it legit, and he complimented me, but said, "You're not supposed to do it this way. This is not the way we do it, and you've got to stop." Fortunately, he didn't take my money. So I went back home with my coffee can full of money, and I did other creative things, over the years to try to raise money, but it always involved sales. Later, a couple of years later, we moved to Alabama, and I went door to door. We lived in a little town called Enterprise. By this time, I was living with my father, and we lived in this little town called Enterprise, which was outside of Fort Rucker, which was an Army base. And my dad, he didn't have any money either. He was a captain in the Army, and at this time, when we moved in with him, he had two other boys at the time, my stepbrother, my half brother. So there was four boys, and again, no extra money. So if you want money, you have to find out a way to do it. Well, this time I did it legally, and I went in and I knocked every door in Enterprise and offered to paint their street numbers on the curb. And so I put everybody's address on the curb for $2 a piece. And I must have gone through, 15, 20,000 doors. No kidding. A lot. I did it every evening, every weekend, and would make good money doing that. Then it was just out of necessity. It's like, if you want money, figure it out. And then as I got into college, thank God I got into college on a scholarship. I played basketball for 2 years, and then my last 2 years were on an academic scholarship. And, I just got fortunate. And so my dad or mom, none of them had to pay for my college, but once again, didn't have any money. So I found a way to make money in college by selling things. And I would buy these knockoff bottles, they're boxes of perfume. I can't even remember, like Chanel, and I can't even remember the names of them. But they smelled like the real perfume. And I would buy these boxes for $11, and I would sell them for $25. And I sold them all through the college campus. How did I do it? I just came up and asked people if they wanted to buy. What's the worst thing they could say? No. I don't recall anybody making fun of me. I do recall some of my teammates on my basketball team being jealous of me. Now, they might laugh at it a little bit, but they also knew I had money in my pocket and they didn't. So I sold knockoff. There was a watch at the time called a Swatch watch. And I bought knockoffs of Swatch watches. Again, buy low, sell high. And I just go all around the college campus. If you're walking down the sidewalk, you're going to get stopped by me and ask if you want to buy something. And then Coach Craball was the baseball coach. And he was the baseball coach that always had this big old wad of tobacco in his mouth. And one of the guys on my team said, "I bet you can't sell anything to Coach Craball." Because he was a man's man. And here I am selling perfume. Well, come to find out, it was just prior to Christmas. Coach Craball had 3 girls, no boys, 3 daughters plus a wife. So I knocked on his office door. "Come on in." I said, "Hey, Coach." And I had this little box of samples, and I'd flip open the samples. And I told him about my perfume, and he smelt the perfume. And he's one of these guys that's like, he had no clue what to get his, the ladies in his family for Christmas. So I was an answer to prayer. So he bought perfume for every girl in his family. So, he was one of my best sales. And then, of course, the guys on the team were like, "Are you serious? You sold perfume to Coach Craball? Oh, my God." I'm like, "Yeah." So, and so when I met my wife, I always had money in my pocket. Okay. It was because I learned how to sell. But I learned how to sell out of necessity. And selling was just simply asking. That's all. Asking and not being afraid of being told no. And I learned from a very young age, I could tell you other stories as well, but I just learned from a very young age, listen, just ask. The worst thing that can happen is people tell you no. And there are way worse things in life than people telling you no, like not having any money, like not being able to do some of the things that you want to do. So I would much rather deal with being told no, because I'm also going to be told yes. And when I get told yes, I make money. And guess what? That translated into my real estate business. And over my career, I've sold well over 4,000 houses because I am not afraid to be told no.